toward the one, the perfection of love, harmony and beauty, the only being, united with all the illuminated souls who form the embodiment of the messenger, the spirit of guidance. Let us invoke the presence of the archangels, of Gabriel, Raphael, Michael, the masters and saints and prophets, Krishna, Buddha, Moses, Jesus, Muhammad. And of the exemplars in many domains of humanity, the great scientists, the great musicians, poets, artists. And tonight we're going to explore deeper meaning of the spirit of guidance and what it means to be the embodiment of the messenger. So I'd like to start with some quotes. This is from Hazrat Khan. Those who view life mystically consider that they are not only at one with the teachers of this or that tradition of the past, but that in every soul there is a spark of that teacher. No soul is without the light of that spiritual teacher. Therefore they have regard and respect not only for the spiritual hierarchy, but also for the spark of that light which has made every soul a part of the spiritual hierarchy. So they regard with respect and reverence every human being in the world. The whole vision of life, the whole manifestation becomes one single evidence of the sublimity of God. And these are some quotes from Hazrat Khan about the message and the messenger. At whatever period that message came, and in whatever form the message was garbed, it was only that one message, the message of wisdom. When wealth was esteemed, the message was delivered by King Solomon. When beauty was worshipped, Joseph, the most handsome, gave the message. When music was regarded as celestial, David gave his message in song. When there was curiosity about miracles, Moses brought his message. When sacrifice was highly esteemed, Abraham gave the message. When heredity was recognized, Christ gave his message as the Son of God. And when democracy was necessary, Muhammad gave his message as the servant of God. This put an end to the necessity for more prophets because of the democratic nature of his proclamation and message. He proclaimed, La ilaha illallah, none exists but God. God constitutes the whole being singly and individually and collectively, and every soul has the source of the divine message within itself. So the invocation that we say at the end used to say, who form the embodiment of the master, the spirit of guidance. But now it's the messenger. And in the former way of thinking, we would think of the messenger as being some great being, and many, many great beings have come to humanity over the centuries. But now there's not a single messenger. And in fact, we're all part of what's becoming the messenger. And so that's what our gathering tonight is going to be about finding ways that we can participate in that more and more deeply and fully. And what came to me this week and what inspired me to do a class this Sunday, because I like to do a class when I feel an inspiration, not just, well, here's a topic and I can share this, but what came was the realization, which I think I had thought of before, but it had been kind of tucked away, that the messenger isn't particular to what we think of as spirituality. That we could say that there are messengers for music and poetry and art and science and business and even politics and every area of human functioning. There have been great beings who have come along and who've really embodied and brought through a breakthrough in that area. But now a realization is coming to us, which has been slow in coming as the insights from quantum physics are really starting to become more accessible to people. There's a realization that we don't live in an individuated, dualistic reality, even though that is what our perception is normally. I'm separate, there's everything out here, and when we undertake a quest for spirituality, or it could be in any domain, in particular, we're wanting to understand more deeply what that's about. We're wanting to discover something, and we're probably not just wanting to settle for, well, I just want to accumulate what's been known and that's good enough. Well, that's probably good enough for a lot of people, but if we have that pioneering kind of spirit in ourselves, we'd like to discover something. In fact, we're going to mix in some practices tonight. So we'll do one right now. And this is one of the divine names I hadn't worked with until Pir Vilayat gave a training for leaders, and he shared this practice, and I've been working with it, and it's really wonderful. And it's Wajid. It's W-A-J-I-D, and Wajid means the finder, the one who finds. It's like discovery wazifa, or sacred name of God. And for those who aren't familiar with the divine names and the way the Sufis work with them, when we say one, we invoke that quality by first saying Ya, Y-A-O-O-H, O finder, Ya Wajid. And we're really calling upon the manifestation of that particular quality, which is not something coming down from above. It's not something buried inside of ourselves we're trying to excavate and bring out. It's a part of the reality in which we live, and we're just opening to that particular way of relating to the divine existence which underlies everything. So I'll say it a few times and then join with me. We'd say Ya Wajid. Ya Wajid. So join with me and really see if you can feel this each time. There's kind of like an expectancy, but you're not trying to prefigure that you know what's going to come, because that wouldn't be any fun. And if you could, it wouldn't be that good, right? I mean, if you've ever had an aha moment, it was probably something that you had never thought of before, or a new light on something that you were doing. So this is kind of the flavor of this one. So let's do it together.
Clarify the last syllable. Is that
Wajid, Wajid, J-I-D, short I, Wajid.
D. The last letter is a D.
D, the last
Yeah,
letter.
Wajid.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's do it together and really feel it as you say it. Ya Wajid. 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 And now, without the Ya, this is called the fikr. It's the silent way of working with the practice. So we just think Wajid on the in-breath at your own rate, without the Ya. Just do that at your own rate. Just think Wajid as you breathe in. And then let go of the word and even thinking about the meaning, and just let yourself feel what's come from this practice without conceptions. And then there's another practice which is wonderful to pair with this one. And this practice is Sattar, S-A-T-T-A-R, Sattar, which means the mystery. So to invoke this, we say Ya Sattar. So I'll do it 3 times and then join with me. Ya Sattar. Ya Sattar. Ya Sattar, join with me. Ya Sattar. 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 This one, when you do it silently on the breath, think Sattar as you exhale without the Ya. Opening to the mystery. And then let go of the word and the meaning and just feel what you experienced. And then let's see what happens if we combine these practices, and we won't do it out loud, but you could. You could do Ya Wajid, Ya Sattar, but we'll just do the fikr, the silent part. So silently breathe in Wajid and breathe out Sattar. And then just the feeling without the words. So now you might be wondering, okay, so perhaps there is something akin to messengers and all the different human domains, and there are practices to tune into the consciousness of another being. We could tune into the consciousness of Moses or Buddha, we could tune into the consciousness of Beethoven or Bach or Einstein, we could pick one. But in light of this notion that now there's a collective wisdom that we can tune into, and it's not particular, like I said, to what we think of as just spirituality. It opens up to whatever domain you're wanting to explore in. But instead of thinking that you're tapping into a particular very wise person or very talented person in a particular area, imagine now that you are tapping into the wisdom that's accrued from many, many beings over the centuries, which is already pretty wonderful. So you could do that. But then you could also realize, well, these beings that you're tuning into, unless they're living, have gone on, they're existing in other realms. So why limit your consciousness to just tuning into living beings when you can open up to this collective field of wisdom that transcends space and time? So there's a whole other area you could go into. But even then, you might be limited by usual concepts that, okay, now there's this incredible body of accrued wisdom in all the disciplines, and I can pick one and I can tap into it like it's this cosmic library, or like how people think usually about the Akashic records. You know, it's got all the knowledge that there is, and you can tap into it. You could do a Google search, so to speak. But that's an old notion, to think that it's something fixed, and that the best you can do is just tap into it, which would be pretty far out. But imagine now that your uniqueness interlinking with this accrued wisdom now adds a dimensionality that wasn't present before. And now you're opening up a space of possibilities for a revelation to take place in whatever domain it happens to be. It could be art, it could be music, it could be poetry, it could be, you fill in the blank with what you like, but something new now emerges that you have very much something to do with. So it's not just tapping into something fixed. So we form the embodiment of the messenger. The messenger is this living, evolving collectivity. At the recent leaders training that we had with Pir Vilayat, he talked about different kinds of angels, and he said that there's some angels, and in particular the way we think of archangels, that are not like this single entity, but they're kind of like a collective of different beings that are working for a common purpose. So imagine now that this messenger that you feel, we form the embodiment of the messenger, is this collectivity, but you are a part of that. You are a part of the transformation of that, and what's gained from you interlinking with that becomes available to everybody else in existence on every level, and vice versa. So it's not just this solo thing, you're downloading, so to speak, something and then you put it out there. Well, that's good. I mean, you can share that discovery, but you're actually opening up something that becomes available to anyone who's got that capacity to tap into it. So some of you may be familiar with biologist Rupert Sheldrake, and he talks about something called the morphogenic field. And the story he tells is like on this one island, there were some monkeys that would eat sweet potatoes, and they'd usually just eat them with the sand and everything, but one day one of them found if you wash them off, they taste a lot better. But then there was another island 20 miles away, way out of any means of sight or communication. And shortly after, the monkeys on this island started doing that, the monkeys on that island started doing that. Well, how did that happen? But there's other examples, like in chemistry, there's some things that had proven nobody knew how to synthesize certain things. It's extremely difficult. But once someone was able to do that, then it became much easier. Other people started being able to do that other places around the world. So this goes in with quantum physics, that we live in a non-local reality, which means that effects can transpire instantaneously across time and space. It's not like a signal gets broadcast somewhere. Excuse me. Okay, now you might be thinking, well, this sounds pretty neat. I'd like to get in on the action of this. How do I do that? Okay, well, if you think you can do it from your separated, usual, quote, normal state of consciousness, it won't work. And, you know, you may have the experience you're trying to figure something out, and you rearrange all the things you know about it, and it's just not working. And then sometimes you just let go of that, and then an inspiration comes to you, and now you have a breakthrough. You had something that you could not have gotten to had you just gone along that same line of thought that you'd been pursuing, which was keeping you stuck. And what was keeping you stuck is your underlying assumptions that you probably didn't take as being assumptions. You probably took it as being just the way that things are. And if you think that that's how things are, then you're not going to go look for something that doesn't fit with that, because of course that would be impossible until you've discovered, or someone else. And then it's like, if you're familiar with Thomas Kuhn, the structure of scientific revolution, it's talking about how breakthroughs happen first. People think the first person that espouses something that's radically different from the status quo, people think that they're crazy. They don't know what they're talking about. You know, their papers aren't going to get published in any respectable journal. But then after a period of time, more people get on board. Then after a while, everybody goes, well, of course, we've always thought this way. You know, it becomes part of the mainstream. But then there's that settled body of knowledge until someone else is able to make a breakthrough. So how do these breakthroughs happen? Well, it requires at least temporarily letting go of your usual assumptions and your usual ways of looking at things, and being in a state of what psychologists would call passive volition. It's like you have an intention, but you're not just going, I want to do this, I want this. You're just opening to the possibility of it becoming realized, but you're not trying to push it. You just let go of it, and then you're in this open, receptive space, and you just have a trust that an answer will come to you. Hasranai Khan said something very interesting. He said that there's no question that remains unanswered, either in this life or beyond. So if you have a genuine question, there will be a response to it, maybe not as quick as you like. An example I put in the book I wrote many years ago, Upgrading the Operating System of the Soul. I've been working with this form of the zikr, which is a Sufi practice, and I've been working with it from both sides at once, like from the human and the divine side, coming to a meeting place, and then the breakthrough that takes place from that, and opening to what comes through. But then this question arose, like, well, yeah, that's good, but why would there be anything after this? You know, what's the impetus for what Pir Vilayat would say, the next step? And I just held that question for 3 weeks. And then one day in my meditation, the answer came to me. It's and the term I have for it is the eliciting light of Sophia. It's like a force in existence that has a longing to draw forth wisdom that's not existent yet, that requires a manifest being in sync with the transcendent, whatever you want to call that, God, their personal Lord, the divine side of things, that linkage to take place, and then there has to be this in-between state. Sufi said you have to go through fana, you have to go through, the old definition was annihilation, but it's really just a total letting go of the previous way of understanding and knowing, and being in this in-between place in which self-organization takes place. And then it seems chaotic, so you can't know in that condition what's going to emerge, because if you could, you'd be prefiguring it, and it wouldn't be what you're looking for. You see what I'm saying? It would just shut the whole thing down. But if you can just be in that space, then something emerges from it. It's analogous to the caterpillar now is in the chrysalis on the way to becoming a butterfly, but if you open up that chrysalis, you're just going to get goo. You couldn't possibly know that a butterfly is going to emerge from that. It would be an impossibility. So you're opening to that, but there is something that's drawing forth what can become from what's latent. Okay, so are you with me? It's that letting go of your previous way of knowing and looking at things, and what you're putting into the hopper is not nothing. So again, an old way of thinking would be you just totally disappear. It's like there's not any of me, it's just all God. Well, I think that's an old way of thinking about things, because for this divine unfoldment to take place, it very much takes the uniqueness of your being, but it can't work with the separated dualistic perception of the uniqueness of your being, because then it shuts the whole thing down. So what you're putting into the hopper, this in-between state, is all the accrued wisdom from what's been gleaned from your life up to there, and you're putting it in there, but you can't know what's going to emerge from it. But lo and behold, what we think of as the divine has to be doing the same thing. So again, to me, this is my perspective. The usual notion of God is omnipotent, unchanging, perfect, knows everything or whatever, and I think that can't possibly be true for there to be a living God and a universe that has any meaningfulness. So the divine side of things also has to let go of the previous way of knowing of the divine's own being that has taken place up to then through you. So each of us enables a unique way of the divine to know the divine's own being, okay? But in this meeting, in this in-between state, both sides have to let go of what they've known about what's been so far and be in this state of openness and receptivity. And now something is born from that. Something emerges from that, okay? And we're all capable of that. And this can happen not just, again, in what we think of as spirituality, but it could be in anything that you're wanting to further your capacity, whatever's your deepest way of expressing the uniqueness of who you are, which could be that of an artist, a musician, a writer, a poet, a scientist, a business person, a cook. It could be anything. That something's going to come through from that wasn't there before by you undertaking this process. So what shuts it down is to cut it off at the pass by presuming that you know what it's probably going to look like, because you don't. It was never there before. You're not Wajid finding, you're thinking, I lost my keys, where are they? But in this case, you're finding something that was never there before, but you've enabled the possibility of it being there by your own being in relationship with whatever you're experiencing. Okay, do y'all follow what I'm saying here? It's created in the process. Revelation is something emergent. It's not a discovery of something that is. It's a discovering of something that's becoming, that's made possible through you and through everything in existence. So let me read you some more quotes from Hazrat Khan. Divine circulation through the veins of nature. We are part of the divine actually these are my words, but they were inspired by Hazrat Khan. We are part of the divine circulatory system. What circulates? Light. We become conscious enablers of the transformation of light through our being of light. We are part of the divine cosmic neural network, which is the mind of God. We are part of the divine circulatory system, which is the heart of God. When we awaken in life as a human divine being, we become part of the body of God. Wisdom is created as the fruit of the interplay of light upon light that enables a third presence to arise. New creation occurs because God, in relationship with manifestation, is the birther of new treasures never before known. And then I came across something I'd written, I don't know when, quite a while ago. Wisdom is latent in a space of possibilities from which revelation emerges. Subtle information becomes manifest information through the relationship between something in manifestation and the transcendent. And this last sentence just really struck me, and I don't remember writing this before. Sophia is not just the archetype of wisdom that is, she is the archetype of wisdom that becomes. So Sophia is discovering along with us, but she is the archetype of wisdom. And this is Hazrat Khan. Life is the answer to the mystic's question. With every question that arises in the heart of the mystic, he or she has but to look at life before them and it answers them. Even a question about some business or industry is revealed to the mystic just by looking at a tree. Someone is laughing, someone is crying, someone is talking, someone is working, and every one of these actions is an answer to what the mystic wishes to inquire into. Isn't that pretty amazing? To think that, and perhaps you've had realizations that have been triggered by some really simple thing, maybe a bird singing, and just something opened up from that. No sooner does a sound fall on their ears, no sooner are their eyes cast upon any object, condition, or individual, than the answer to that question which has arisen in their heart comes to them. The mystic need not go to a palmist to ask what is going to happen. They're not in pursuit of soothsayers. The mystic need not consult horoscopes. The whole of life, everything they look at is the answer to their question. And if they don't wish to look at the objective world, they only have to close their eyes and find the answer within themselves. The objective answer is waiting for them in the outer world, and the answer from the inner voice is waiting within. Spiritual revelation tells you about life and nature, its secret, its condition, its origin, its end. It comes in a language of its own. Then the one to whom it comes puts it through different processes in order to make the same intelligible to themselves. If they're artistic, they shape it in a beautiful phrase, in a verse, in a song, in a form of beauty. If they're interested in experiencing beauty through the sense of hearing, they reproduce it on the disc of their heart and listen to it speaking as Moses did on Mount Sinai. If they're accustomed to admire the beauty of form, they picture the revelation in a beautiful form. They call it as an angel, as Gabriel came to Muhammad. The worshiper of God calls it the Word of God. The one who realizes the self listens to it as the voice from within. It is the same in all cases. It is revelation. So when we have an experience, and the experience, we're in a state which is really oftentimes beyond any words that we can put it into. However, we don't want it just to disappear. And so what do? We find a way of translating that experience into a form that it becomes perceptible to ourselves and even able to be communicated to some extent. And how do we do that? Well, it's different ways for different people. Oftentimes it's through a metaphor. Well, this is like such and such. Or it might be an image that comes to us and we share that. It might be a poem. It might be a dance. It might be a song that comes. Our son is a scientist, and he went from when he was little, we would sit and meditate with him. And he's made some incredible discoveries because he's able to open to possibilities and see how things could interconnect that most people would think, well, this one couldn't have anything to do with that one. But as a matter of fact, putting together, and even the way he works in his lab, having people from different disciplines all working together, and they're all working on whatever they're interested in. It's not like he says, well, everybody's going to work on this because that's my thing. But they've made all these breakthroughs as a result. So this is another really important point about the notion of embodiment of the messenger, that it's not an individual thing, it's a collective consciousness that we become capable of contributing to. Pir Vilayat would talk about we become capable of participating in the divine programming, and I've kind of augmented this to say we become capable of being a conscious node in the divine neural network. But our participation, you would think of a neural network, well, here's this node, here's that node. But actually our participation is like a whole field of other beings that we're interconnected with. And that's what's plugged into the cosmic neural network, but each part of that has got its own connections. So now there's infinitely many more possibilities than could have been there before from any separated part. So I've said this so many times, I believe the only hope for humanity and the only way that there's going to be any significant change to seemingly intractable problems which have plagued the world from the cavemen is when enough people achieve a state of awakening to be able to very much maintain their uniqueness, but also experience the circulation of their consciousness with other beings who share similar goals and ends. And that's going to enable breakthroughs to take place that could never happen through no matter how many well-meaning people functioning in a separated state of consciousness. And not that we shouldn't try to do what we do, of course we should, but so much more can happen when this takes place. And so if you wonder, well, you know, what good is this spirituality business? Well, I think it's the hope for saving the world, you know, what we can each awaken to. And it's not thinking in the former way, well, you know, we're all going to become just like the Buddha. Well, I don't want to become like the Buddha. I want to become like me. And I want you to become like you. But Hazrat Khan said the purpose of spirituality is to become a natural human being. But he also talks about there's what he calls he used the language of his time, the man-God and the God-man. And the man-God is a being who's, you know, studied and received guidance and awakened to the point that they can really do what I'm trying to describe here tonight, participate in this never-ending process of awakening of divinity to its own possibilities in existence. And to me, that's the reason for being on a spiritual path. There's many valid reasons, but in Buddhism, I can't remember the terms, but there's like the narrow path, and then there's the broad path, and the narrow path is someone just wants their own enlightenment. That's fine, but the broad path is the bodhisattva not going to jump into nirvana until every sentient being is enlightened. But I think the bodhisattva realizes not only is that never going to happen, but it would be very undesirable if it ever could happen, because that's not the point of existence. The point of existence is the unfoldment of ever more possibilities of what can become that is a discovery not only of all the beings in manifestation, but of whatever you think of as the divine being of God is co-discovering along with us, but the divine cannot make this happen, and the divine can't realize these things without the connectedness with the manifest beings. It's two ends of really the one being. I've shared this before. Even Arby says that the human and the divine each create the other, and neither side has any meaningfulness without the other, which is a mind-boggling thing to say. But if you dive into his works, then after a while it starts to make some sense. You know, we're just as we're limited in being stuck in a Newtonian way of looking at the world, we're stuck in being in a Newtonian way of looking at spirituality. And God is up there, we're here, and oftentimes the point of the path is, well, we're trying to get to God and get past this messy manifestation and go to this land of bliss somewhere else. But the Sufis would say that's not why there was creation in the first place. God was a hidden treasure desiring to be known, to love, and be loved, and that could only take place through the relationship with beings in existence who had to develop that capacity to really fully participate in this relationship, which requires both sides. You can't have a relationship with one side. It doesn't work too well. And you can't have a relationship with something that's static. If you think, well, God is static, perfect, unchanging, or whatever, how can you relate to that? Because then really nothing you're doing is going to make any difference on that side of things. You're just trying to get rid of all the stuff that maybe God doesn't like, you think, and then you'll get rewarded by going somewhere good. How could that be the point of existence? So I want to read you some of Pir Vilayat.
Don't forget about us too. There's a lot of ideas.
I know, we're gonna have a time of we'll have a time of sharing. Don't worry.
I can nudge him every once in a while.
I marked so many things here, so bear with me a moment. Well, I'll read a thing from Hazrat Khan along the way, finding this. When one inquires deeply into life, one finds that what all souls seek is to know the meaning of life. The scientist looks and searches for it in the realm of science, and the artist finds it in their art. Whatever different interests people may have, their only real inclination is to find the meaning of life. This shows that it is the nature of the soul, and that the soul has come here for this purpose, that it may realize and understand the meaning of life. Thus, in either a material or a spiritual way, every soul is striving for what it longs for all the time, each in its own particular way. A real mystic should prove to be an inspired artist, a wonderful scientist, an influential statesman. When one goes still further on the path of intuition, one comes to what is called revelation, which means that everything and every being reveals to one its secret. Such a one feels that every leaf has a tongue to tell its legend. He finds that every soul is a living book which reads its own story aloud. He finds that every condition of life is turned inside out before him the moment he looks at it. He or she feels that they're at home on earth and in heaven, and that both the here and the hereafter become manifest to their soul. This is Pir Vilayat. Mershid said that wisdom is the interface between the external knowledge of the soul and the know-how gleaned by experience. Of course, the extrapolation between the Sufi view and the new paradigms of science is mutually cross-pollinating and excitingly promising for the future of human thought. As evolution proceeds, human thought advances like a tide, untiringly breaking into new horizons. We find evidence the pull of a future that is exploratory rather than the push of the past. Consequently, the personality of the inner wayfarer may now exhibit qualities beyond even its latent idiosyncrasies, because the divine archetypes are themselves unlimited and hence undefinable. The future is not already there. It is inherent in an infinite host of inexhaustible possibilities. We create it by imagining how circumstances and ourselves might be if they would be, as is inherent in an infinite host of inexhaustible possibilities. We create it by imagining how circumstances and ourselves might be if they would be as they could be.
Could you say that again?
I'll give the cliff notes. The future is not fixed, but we can imagine possibilities, and it's kind of like you're throwing something out, or if you're going to climb a cliff, you got to throw something out to land in there so you can pull yourself up, but you don't know what you're going to find up there, so you're putting out just a foothold into the future, and you're seeding it. I'm glad you asked that question. You're seeding it with a desire. So you have a desire to bring something forth, and you have kind of a nucleus of what you think it might be like, but it's not fixed. And now you're allowing an openness to what emerges from that. And so that's that participate. Yes, that's that ish. That's, in fact, that relates to, if I can find the quote.
Ish, I-S-H-Q, and it's a deep desire. Makes things clear.
So there is, I can't find the particular quote, but I will summarize what I was looking for. Ish, I-S-H-Q, the usual meaning is nostalgia, and usually we think of it as a longing to go back, to return to the one. And that's one direction of it, but there's other directions of this ish. And I mentioned the eliciting light of Sophia, and that's this pull of the future. That's this longing of the archetypal being of wisdom for something to emerge that has never been known before, that can't be known except by our participation in that. So it's a longing. This is what Pir Vilayat calls the pull of the future, a longing for what is yet to become. And that's, the Sufis would say, that's what creation is about. Creation is not about just going back to where it came from, because if that were the case, then it is all, as the Hindus would say, it's all Leela, it's all play, it's all just the dream of God, and it just goes back and then starts over again. And I mentioned before, there's this wonderful book called Ka, K-A, which is also a good Scrabble word, in case you don't know. And Ka, this person, it's really worth reading, takes the traditional stories of Hinduism, Radha and Krishna, Rama and Sita and so on, but I've never seen this anyplace else in writings about Hinduism. He talks about the usual with the cycles of creation, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, creation, existence, destruction, and then it just starts back at square one all over again. But what he talks about is, that one cycle comes to an end, and even the cosmologists say that our universe eventually, in a very, very long time, 10 to the, 120th year is the last proton will decay into subatomic particles. And you think, oh, well, that was nice, but what was it all about? But what he says in this book is, when one cycle ends, there's the seed of all the wisdom that's accrued from everything that's been gained from that cycle of existence, and that's the starting seed of the next universe that's created. It doesn't start from nothing. It starts from all that's been gained before. And there's some theories in cosmology about black holes and white holes, that a white hole could be the kind of opposite of a black hole. It's like an opening into a new universe. So to me, this gives so much more meaningfulness to existence, that yes, there may be many cycles of great births and ends of manifest universes, but nothing is ever lost from that. And collectively, we talk about who formed the embodiment of the messenger. Just think about the messenger not just being from all that's happened in this universe, but from untold universes and untold realms of existence. And imagine tapping into that pool, pretty far out, but then imagine that you have something to bring to that was never there before and couldn't be there before, except for the uniqueness of who you are. So the next time you get down on yourself and think, I'm not a very good person, and what do I do that makes any difference? As Ibn Arabi says, every soul has access to a unique part of the divine wisdom that no other soul ever has, could, or will have access to. And he told the Prophet Muhammad, he said God told the Prophet Muhammad that Prophet Muhammad had to learn from his followers, because each of them had access to a part of the divine wisdom that even the Prophet Muhammad could know. Each of you, and whoever's listening to this recording, has access to a part of divine wisdom that Buddha can't know. For one, it probably hasn't been revealed yet because it doesn't exist yet, because you haven't gotten into this state of co-relationship when it can be born. But isn't that a good reason to get out of bed in the morning? To think that you're able to bring forth something that's a tremendous gift, not only to you, I mean, that wajid, that finding, that feeling, oh wow, it feels so good to have this understanding I never saw before, but your gift to everything in existence, that now that becomes available to everything in existence.